there's as many open STEM jobs as people in prison. And when you teach tech and innovation and skills in prison, you get 7% recidivism, not 70. And so suddenly that can be part of your workforce. All these people, as they come to reform themselves, put them into your teams. We brought all the tech meetup organizers together in the first ever White House tech meetup. And we found all these genius folks who are really getting it done in their city and building community for the economic future. And they also were bridging with these folks. An example here, take rec to tech. In Baltimore, people have taken a rec center, very industrial age space, lots of cool athletics and other community meeting building. They just took 2 rooms. One of them is nano, one's mega. It's a makerspace, little kids, big kids. And so everybody is going in and learning practices in a fun way about being part of apprentice journey mastery into the kinds of jobs that they could have in Baltimore. Or Digital Nest, which grabs youth from the farm working community and pulls them in and pays them hourly to learn to code. So lots of incredible things available to us if we just scout around and pull these kinds of programs into our work. Because we have tons of open jobs in the United States in tech, and also tech is very biased at who thinks they belong. Right now in children's television, it's 15-to-1 boy programmers who are white to girl programmers or anyone of another race on TV in the research that Gina Davis did. So we're propagandizing ourselves. We want everybody into this. So this was some work to get employers who are hiring from new kinds of code boot camps, leaders municipally, and regional teammates like the techies in the meetups to start to work together. So we did that in the White House, and then when we left, we started this tech jobs tour with Leanne Pittsford, who does Lesbians Who Tech, who created it. And we went all over our country in 25 different cities. So this is Cleveland Speed Mentoring. This is in Oakland, we had 2,000 people show up in Silicon Valley trying to figure out how to get into the tech sector. So they're out there, people are out there across this country from Cheyenne to Birmingham, all kinds of places that we went. And there were techies in town who would welcome them into this if we community organized them. So you can think about doing things in that way. Also, there's tech centers. This is Memphis. Right off the Mississippi River is an innovation center. They also do Code Crew, because in Memphis, 45,000 young people are out of school and out of work. And yet we've got AutoZone and FedEx and these great companies there who are starving and people aren't bridging. And so Code Crew started bridging and pulling people in. This is in the Mississippi Delta, Be the Change grocery store, BTC. Up above, they just created a coding boot camp. All the kids in this tiny town who don't go to college, many of them come to this boot camp and flow into the Mississippi tech sector because they want to live in Mississippi. This is happening and scaling, and so they're on their 4th class. One of the ones in Memphis is great. They have these container ships, and they put container ship boxes, they put STEM camps into them and put them in the playground at the school, and they start doing coding with everybody. They even do some history lifting. This is in Appalachia, Pikeville. A bunch of coal miners who are entrepreneurs decided to build a tech company. They advertised for the 12 slots they had, and 800 people applied for the jobs. The first job was learning to code. So if you have jobs and outsourcing that you want to do, there's people all over the country who have centers like this who are trying to lift themselves in. This is drill bit source code, BitSource, and it's in Pikeville. In Idaho, people who are boomerangs, they are people who come back to their hometown. If I went to Buffalo, these people came back to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, bought this amazing building in town and turned it into the Innovation Collective and host regular community gatherings and startups. Beautiful work that they're doing there. One of my favorite things they did was this road rally for tech. They went across the state of Idaho. You can see the centers, 57 events, 20 cities, 3 days, spheros and iPads, and teaching people what it was to play with this technology. 700 people in Idaho signed up to learn to code together, almost like book clubs. And the University of Idaho was giving out computers. So this is really happening. So really can take the old downtown all around the country and shift it. And this is happening in many cities. Think of an entrepreneur in residence in government who flows into different departments and starts helping. Two of the PIFs, the Presidential Innovation Fellows, launched Hack the Pay Gap. Pay gap is one of the greatest challenges in our country and the world, but we don't approach it in a hackathon, but why not? So now we do. And so we saw amazing apps, whether it was VR empathy building tools to help train managers to not make more pay gap, to help people not get relegated to more pay gap, understanding your personal pay gap. This one was one where the prices changed based on your race and gender to raise consciousness. So thinking about data science, we created a data science cabinet, and we found all the data scientists who were around and created a community of practice, because NASA, pretty great at data science, National Institute of Health, pretty great, right? Those people can coach the State Department or HUD or others who have great data analytics teams, but maybe not the same kind of real-time data that we're talking about, and created a rubric like you have at school. And so you could look at this if you were in a team and say, oh my God, I'm not even on this chart, or oh, I'm doing well. This was crowdsourced by the data scientists in government in about 2 weeks. So how do we use our community organizing on our civic area? You know, during the Ebola crisis, we saw huge challenges, right, in many different areas, data, others, but one of them was those suits. Remember the suits, and the poor doctors were having to work only like a 45-minute shift in this suit. It's scary looking. It was making them sick. As they put it on and off, they could get the disease. So people did a hackathon, and they took a day where they put the suits on and off, and they played with it. And we had a wedding dress designer and a hazmat suit designer and some youth and some engineers and some artists and others. And they came up with what became this suit ultimately by photographing all the different insights and ideas people had put together in prototypes and putting it out to the world as a grand challenge, and teams from the world responded and came up with a much better design. So thinking about crowd interaction with your teams, open government, the things I'm talking about are happening all around the world, which is exciting, and they're happening locally with many municipalities. Here in New York, there's a lot of great work going on, as well as other places. I mentioned foster care. Why wouldn't we have a hackathon for foster care? Why wouldn't we figure out so that we can stop putting people and young children into new homes where we move their school, or all this stuff that shouldn't be happening? We have data about that. This is Grace. She's in 10th grade right in this picture, teaching the police chief how to code in New Orleans. So can we pull our youth into hard problems like justice technology, use of force data, officer-involved shooting? We were able to pull together all these cities to talk about these data sets and be willing to open them up, and then create a community of practice that would start working on what can we see in this data so we can improve the quality of justice and the quality of policing in our communities. The last topic I want to talk with you guys has to do with broadening participation and the truth of history. So this story is a pretty fun story from science fair. We used to do science fair in the White House, and the kids would be all over, and the president would walk over and talk with them and learn more. This particular group of kids is from Oklahoma, and they've made a page-turning robot, and the president's asking them about it, and you know, he's asked them, why'd you do this? Because we want to help people. So they've learned that technology can be on behalf of service, exploration, curiosity, but also service. They also get to wear capes and have fun. But the thing he said to them is, how'd you guys do this? And they said, oh, well, we had a brainstorming. Now think about that. And then he said, okay, after your brainstorm, what'd you do? We built some prototypes. What if every kid in the world, in the country, every kid you knew got to play brainstorming and prototyping on a problem in the world when they were, 5 and 6 years old? What kind of confidence would that build? So that's a critical thing that we have to do. But from a broadening participation, we also have a data and culture issue. This one I want to show you is over here. This is from children's television. This is men's lines to women's lines in children's TV, some of the top films that we like. So when we are all children, we see this very biased media where we learn that men speak a lot and women speak some. So when we grow up, we can't even tell what's going on, but this is what we make. That's men's lines to women's lines in 2,000 films. We want to keep the blue and we want to stretch the red, right? How do we do that? Also, as we get older, the men get more lines and the women get less. So these huge biases are operating around us. They're in every data set around us. But this is the meeting you're in, the street signs around you, the statues, your textbook. The whole world is looking lopsided like this, and it's worse for race. One of the things we've been doing is working with a USC team around measuring lines in films like the one I just showed you, and this is some of the Star Wars work. So 1977 and the two more recent films. You can see on gender, there's Carrie Fisher's lines there, and then by race. So we're doing a little better in inclusion. But this is some software that the USC team is working on with us that is how could we actually help the filmmakers and help our media folks as we're making ads and other things to see who's doing what on this screen, and could we actually increase the equality of the media that we're making using AI and data science tools. The other thing I wanted to, so how could we use these tools we have to help with bias? And there's the See Her programs that exist. This one is from history. How many people know Ada Lovelace? A couple people. How many people know Charles Darwin? Everybody. Okay, so Darwin and Ada are contemporaries. She wasn't allowed to submit her paper to the Royal Society, but she did attach it to a translation she did. She worked with Charles Babbage, who created the first mechanical computer. And then what she did was she created the first algorithms, and she's the first computer scientist to ever imagine the idea of programmability. And she wrote a 55-page paper at the same time as Darwin. The translation was 20, and then I put it into WordCat. It's 55 pages. In it, she speaks of our future the way Darwin speaks of our past. Her father is Lord Byron, and she's his poet math daughter. Of course, Lord Byron was with Mary Shelley when she wrote Frankenstein. So all those influences. She was so famous that Charles Dickens was at her bedside when she died as a younger than she should have. But why don't we know about Ada? One time Ada said, in writing a letter, I wish to bequeath to the generations a calculus of the nervous system. She imagined AI. She wrote about how, I think we could figure out the math of the cerebrum if we thought about it right, just like we did with astronomy. So why don't we know about our founder? She has cool hair, too. So I walked in the Oval Office to talk to President Obama and take him to a coding event that we were going to do for Computer Science Education Week. And Prince William had just left the Oval Office. So how many people have ever seen the Imitation Game movie? Yeah, it's an incredible movie about the code breakers at Bletchley Park who saved 11 million lives and shortened the war by 2 years with elite mathematics, breaking the codes for the Enigma. So I said to the president, since Prince William had just left, I said, you know, sir, what we're about to do is related to Prince William. And he said, how's that? I said, his wife, her grandmother and great aunt were code breakers at Bletchley Park. And so 2/3 of the people at Bletchley Park were women. And the president said, oh, the movie doesn't show that. And I said, yes, sir, it's hurting the economy. So the fact that we don't tell the whole truth, that men and women have always worked together on solving these challenges, that in fact in the United States, Eckert and Mauchly, who designed the first physical computer, the ENIAC, they went upstairs and asked the women, the mathematicians upstairs, to come downstairs, and 6 women came and took the wiring diagrams and figured out how to program the ENIAC. The first digital programmers in America are 6 women. I want that movie. It's like A League of Their Own meets computers. Right, but they're really here, and they wrote the first sort routines, and they did the foundation of what became programming. And yet they checked the codes at the launch of the ENIAC. Grace Hopper. Do people know Grace Hopper? Grace is amazing. Grace. She's a rear admiral in the Navy. President Reagan is promoting her here. She had this idea. She worked on Mark I, first computers. Later, when she was in the UNIVAC team and on in, she came up with this idea that maybe we shouldn't code in machine code, that we could use human languages, and that we could take something to translate it. So she invented the compiler. So she came up with this idea of languages, and everybody told her, no, nobody wants to do that. She's like, I think we can broaden the participation, and so she did it. She also created subroutines, lots of amazing fundamentals. The Nobel Prize equivalent for computer science, they're named Turing and Hopper because of Alan Turing and Grace Hopper. But what we have instead is this idea of the UNIVAC tells itself what to do. No, I think there were a lot of women programming it at the time. But we diminish the input and the things that women have done, and it makes us, and it's not like we're trying to do that individually, it's a systems problem and we have to change it.